Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is yet another moment that both you and I wish Wally Pryor were here. But how about that game yesterday? You know what Wally'd say if he were here? I think he'd say, how about that score? Alabama 59, Aggies 7. My name is Bob Cole, and for the past, comes on 15 years now, I've been privileged to be the voice of this magnificent institution known as the Texas Longhorn Band. It is such a great honor, an honor of all honors, to be here with you to celebrate the life of the amazing man, our beloved Vincent R. DiNino. Vincent Revered DiNino, known to Longhorn fans as Vincent R. Known to his Longhorn Band family, of course, as Mr. D, was actually born in Manhattan, Kansas, October 25th, 1918. Think about that, 1918. And all of the accepting and progressive nature of Mr. D from someone born back then. He was born to Frank V. and Leah Raritan DiNino. For those of you who knew Mr. DiNino very well, it will come as no surprise. He left some very, underline very, specific instructions on how we are to proceed this morning. He actually wrote an email 6 years ago in 2008 to Professor Jerry Junkin. And he says, hey Jerry, the following is a just-in-case set of instructions and wishes I'd like to convey to you and my most trusted and beloved friends, just in case of some unexpected issue, or if I become, say, permanently AWOL, I request the following. I'd like the music to be performed by the members of the UT Longhorn Band and Wind Ensemble. He then said, this will be a celebration. Now that was followed by 6 exclamation points. Please keep it upbeat. A conservative 1 exclamation point. I loved you all. 4 exclamation points. You all kept me young. 5 exclamation points. One of Mr. D's students, when he arrived here in Texas, and arguably the person responsible for the full-time faculty line of the Longhorn Band director being created, is our first speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Commander Jim Richards.
In the Navy, we call officers Mr., so the name Mr. D comes quite naturally to me. I've known Mr. D for 60 years, having him as a friend and the Longhorn Band director for my senior year, his first year in Austin, and later while doing graduate work at UT. Now, Vincent R. DiNino graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1941 with a wife, Jane, and a daughter, Diana. Carmen came along a little bit later. He began teaching music at Lake Mills, Iowa for a brief period, but he really wasn't happy with that. So he wanted to enlist in the Navy and the Marine Corps, but was unable to do so because he wore glasses. Briefly for a year, he was very proud of his war effort as an ore trammer in the Vermilion Iron Ore Range of Minnesota, working deep underground as a trammer, an ore trammer, and returning to band teaching later, he spent a year in Bad Axe, Minnesota. Now that was funny you mentioned that because every time you see him, you say, where's your axe? And I guarantee you, Mr. D may have lived in Bad Axe, but he never played the Bad Axe in his entire career. In the Army, Vince was sent by Uncle Sam for basic training in Camp Robbins, California, spending the final 3 weeks on bivouac in the desert, training to be a machine gunner, and M1 Garand sniper, destined to go to the South Pacific. However, fate intervened when the major drove up in a Jeep telling soldier DiNino, get out of that dusty uniform and report back to Camp Roberts immediately. Well, Vince didn't know what was going on, but a French horn player in the Camp Roberts pit band, the Red Skeletons entertainment troupe, had become ill, and Vince was requisitioned to replace him in the serviceman's nightly show. The band was actually led by Jack Cathcart, who had been with Artie Shaw's big band, and Vince played so well, he later became first horn and assistant conductor as a permanent member of the Camp Roberts California Army Bands. Only a week before he was to ship out to the Pacific, fate again intervened, and the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, and the war was over. Remaining in the Army, he was transferred to the Presidio in San Francisco to again be named first horn and assistant conductor of the Presidio Post Army Band for General Joseph Stilwell, who was a great lover of band music. He remained there until his discharge on June 27, 1946, but was very, very proud of his service in the military. His friendship with many of the musicians in the Army at Camp Roberts later led to him playing professionally with many famous bands in Los Angeles and New York City. To again use a military phrase, I would comment, mission accomplished, Vincent R. DiNino. In the Navy, we'd say, well done, Mr. D, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Jim Richards. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, we'd ask you to stand now. And you are encouraged, in fact, indeed, strongly encouraged to sing as loudly as you can, just as Vincent R. DiNino would, and join the wind ensemble in our national may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. DiNino had a special place in his heart for all things associated with our great university. And our next speaker, well, from the time she represented this university as a cheerleader through a time of service in our state and our nation in the United States Senate, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison had no bigger fan than Vincent R. DiNino. No surprise, we're all fans of the senator. Why, I hear even Harry Reid likes her. That's enough. Teach me that. Appearing this morning in her role, however, as the president of the Texas Exes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison.
One more thing about Vincent R. DiNino, and that is playing the Star-Spangled Banner so we can sing it when it means the most, rather than some rendition. Thank you. I have known many people who contribute to communities in so many different ways. Some have several or many interests and hobbies, and they give their time and effort to these things. That was not Vincent R. DiNino. Mr. D gave his life commitment to one community, Longhorn Band Nation. In 1955, he took over an okay band. His mission was modest, to make it the greatest marching band in college, in any college in America. And he dedicated his life and focus on accomplishing that mission. Step one, increase the size while maintaining the highest standards. Excellent musicians first and foremost. But he knew the best musicians would not be noticed without something more. Step two, he captured Texas' unique appeal through appropriate uniforms. Orange and white, Western, with fringe and white cowboy hats. Step three, choreography. Halftime performances that were complicated and performed with precision. I was on the field last night. I couldn't believe the precision. Everybody in line. And step four, everything big like Texas. Big band, Big Bertha, big statement. Result, mission accomplished. After his retirement in 1985, Mr. D became the cheering section. If you were part of his flock, it was permanent. The Longhorn Band and cheerleader alumni are part of his extended family. He cheered for me every minute that I was out of school. He was always there, cheering me on. He cheered for Rex Tillerson and hundreds of others as we went out to use our UT education to make the world better. Lessons learned from Mr. D, loyalty and an indefatigable spirit, which have enriched Texas and America. Vincent R. DiNino, a life well lived, an indelible mark on his beloved UT, and yes, mission accomplished.
All right, well, in remembering Mr. D's instructions, I want the same to be up. Here's a reminder that this is a celebration. Here now is his band, your band, my band, our band, the Texas Longhorn Band, and March Grandioso. This hall is renowned for sound. Wow, that's amazing. At this point now, we turn to two incredibly wonderful people, and you can see why. Their special thoughts and recollections will obviously be very special to us. Mr. DiNino's daughter is Carmen. She will speak of her father, followed by Jeff Sloan, who is Mr. DiNino's stepson. First, here's Carmen.
The greatest gift I ever had came from God. I called him Dad. Thank you, my dear Jerry Junkin, Rob Carnahan, Scott Hanna, Anthony Marinello, Bob Cole, Jim Richards, and the Honorable Kay Bailey Hutchison for all you have contributed to create this spectacular weekend celebration of the life of Vincent R. DiNino. My deepest gratitude to everyone who made this magnificent weekend possible. My name is Carmen DiNino, Paul Spock, and I have been blessed to be the youngest child of the man whose incredible life we celebrate today in this great hall. My father was and always will be my hero. Bigger than life itself, a strong, fierce, passionate, and brilliantly talented man, who for me was somewhere between God, General George Patton, and the Music Man. My father didn't tell me what to do. He lived and let me watch him do it. I was always at his side. What a rich legacy of lessons he left. Priceless. Can you imagine what it would be like to have Vincent R. DiNino as your father? Our entire lives revolved around Dad and the band, and led to a childhood of exceptional, exciting, and unforgettable adventures, such as having college band students and cheerleaders for my playmates, having the old band hall as my playhouse, having the UT campus as my playground, going to hundreds of football games. Vacations were recruiting trips to find band boys. And at 5 years old, I must say that Dad and I did a pretty good job, as evidenced by the fact that we did recruit the best of the best band boys in the state of Texas, many of whom are in this hall today. Being the youngest receptionist at the old band hall and learning to cheerfully answer the phone. Longhorn Band Hall, Carmen DiNino speaking, how may I help you? Bus hanging parties in the old Kerrville bus barn, torchlight parades and bonfires at pep rallies, going to hundreds of band rehearsals in the old band hall and on old Clark Field, falling asleep at Schultz's beer garden after many of those rehearsals, spending every Thanksgiving at the Texas A&M football games, going to bowl games and presidential inaugurations, and being the littlest cheerleader on the University of Texas cheerleading squad, all against the breathtaking backdrop of the most magnificent music in the world. What a life my father created for this little girl. My father was an eternal optimist, always seeing opportunity in every situation. My father sees the opportunity in leaving an idyllic life in Minnesota to go to the University of Texas, the unknown, during one of the worst droughts in Texas history, in a record heat wave, and with a significant cut in pay. Dad's decision to take that one opportunity changed his life and ours forever. My father accepted the opportunity to take an old, weathered, wooden barracks building right here at 500 East 23rd and turn it into the most beloved and sacred musical facility on the 40 acres. Because that was the hall in which Dad saw the opportunity to build his dreams. Never a complaint, only gratitude for the opportunity. Many of our fondest memories were in that beloved old band hall with Dad, building the dream of the best band in the world.
In reality, my father actually gave us the opportunity to learn skills and the discipline we would need to build our own dreams one day. My father knew that success meant going from trial to trial without any loss of enthusiasm, and knew that only those who welcome and accept those types of challenges can feel the exhilaration of victory and ecstasy. Like the great General George Patton, my father knew that pressure makes diamonds, and he was gifted in knowing precisely when to apply that pressure on us, his diamonds in the rough. As many of you have experienced, to be on the receiving end of that DiNino pressure was rough. Could be terrifying. But when that pressure did not kill us, it always made us stronger and better than we were before. My father was a patriot to the end, was one of the last surviving veterans of World War II, a member of the greatest generation. My father knew that every veteran at one point in his life wrote out a check made payable to the United States of America for an amount of up to and including his life. My father always remembered that freedom is precious and that freedom isn't free. My father loved dogs. One very special dog in particular, his beloved dachshund, Fritz, who was a band dog to be sure. When Dad met the much adored Fritz for the first time, it was love at first sight. Bobby and Becky Foster introduced Fritz to us and explained how the only way they were able to keep Fritz at all was by rotating him between campus dorm rooms and automobiles. And that it was getting more and more difficult to juggle Fritz's schedule so they would not get caught by the campus authorities. My father said that he understood, and that if they ever needed a new home for Fritz, we would take him in a minute, never thinking that Bob and Becky would ever give up their adored Fritz. Then one day, a miracle happened, and Bob and Becky called to ask if we were serious about taking Fritz, and if so, they would allow him to come live with us. Talk about joy. Fritz had us at woof. Fritz loved my father so much that he even learned to climb the steep, treacherous wooden stairs of the old band hall just so he could make his way up to Dad's office and see his best friend. My father had a very strong spirit. His favorite saint, St. Francis of Assisi, Italian of course, instructed us to preach the good news as loudly as we can, and if we have to, use words. My father concurred and expressed his spirituality through his actions. My father enjoyed giving us a task or a problem to solve and then letting us surprise him by using our talents and ingenuity to achieve the results. No one was more proud of our successes than my father. My father was a romantic. He loved and adored my mother since they were in the 5th grade, for a grand total of 79 years of friendship, courtship, and marriage. What a team. Of my mother, my father once said, I knew I was in love with Jane when I didn't want to fall asleep, because reality was actually better than my dreams. Then, who could have imagined that in his 90s, my father would date again and have a girlfriend? Dad let us know that even at age 90, it is never too late to find love, leaving much hope for the rest of us. In my father's case, I believe he must have had a divine matchmaker. My dad let me know about Miss Tim through a lyric by the great Sammy Kahn that said, love truly is lovely the second time around. Like my father, feisty, intelligent, fearless, in Miss Tim, he had finally met his match. With marriage at age 95, 2 families were united, and I was now blessed to have a mother, a new mother, and 5 wonderful brothers, Michael, Todd, Patrick, Jeffrey, and Matthew. Tim gifted Dad with the knowledge about families and how to love, communicate, and make amends within a family. My father adored my husband, Rick. He even kissed and hugged him and told him that he loved him. My father asked why Rick took so much time and effort to come with Carmen on the many trips to visit him, even during hunting seasons. And Rick replied, "Because Dad, you are worth it." My father said that he learned from Rick that kindness changes everything. He said that he took comfort in knowing that Rick would always be there for his darling daughter after he was gone. My father left words of encouragement for my son, his only grandchild. My father said, "Son, you will move mountains. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so go on your way." On behalf of my sister Dinah and her band alum husband and first chair trumpet player Mike Reeves, my husband, my son, and the entire DiNino Sloan family and friends, I express my deepest gratitude for the great joy and magnificent music you brought to my father during his lifetime. Oh, how we loved you so.
Good morning. Greetings to everyone this morning. First of all, let me say, what a great alumni band day yesterday. Thank you for being here, and thank you for those who couldn't make it today and they're checking the webcast today. I know we're all a bit sleepy, worn out from alumni band, but that's exactly what Vince wanted and expected. Marvelous fellowship, great music, and a festive gathering of all these banders. All the reasons why he and the students created the alumni band in the first place. I can honestly say, though, however, he would be a little bit of a lashing of us for taking such a hoopla all this mess today, because he was quite the humble man. We've already heard some wonderful candid comments about things, Jim, Senator Hutchinson, and Carmen. Today is about sitting back and enjoying some fabulous stories about Vince. I do have a spoiler alert. Some of those stories or comments make you laugh, they're going to make you giggle. Some will bring up an old memory of some event way back when. Some will very well make you shed a tear and make you cry. But that's why we're here today. It's a celebration of life. We're here surrounding ourselves with memories, fellowship, and the sharing of this immense love that we have for Vince. And that's the love I want to speak about today. And that's the heart of Vincent DiNino. Clearly, there's something very meaningful about the hearts that goes well beyond the physical organs that beats in our chest and gives us our precious life. When someone wants to get serious about something, they say, "Let's get to the heart of the matter." Or they may say, "My heart goes out to you." Vincent knew the meaning of this heart business altogether. He had an extremely vibrant heart, one that was full of energy, chock full of love. Love of his family, love of his life, love of his students, and love for the music, and the love of the University of Texas. He was blessed with a heart that beat for near 96 years. Next Saturday would be his 96th birthday. We all used to joke about Vince and say he was the guy that kept the Energizer Bunny going. As it was written, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." Vince clearly understood this, and he possessed an immeasurable and unconditional love for all of us. He expressed this love through his love of music and his friends and his family. Each one of you and I, and everybody here, is that very love that I speak of. His heartbeat was as profound as the beat of Big Bertha, and his monumental love for all of us showed through his interaction with all of us. As Carmen said, he was from a very small family, an only child raised by his grandparents. And although he and Jane raised 2 daughters, he regularly called members of the Longhorn Band and the alumni band his children and his family. He was constantly talking about one of my boys or one of my girls, and he never met a stranger. You always saw him with an affable smile on his face, and you felt like you'd known him for years. He loved this huge extended family very much. His capacity to love that many people for such a long period of time required a very unique and special heart. He spent 67 years with Jane, his wife and companion, and after her passing several years back, the heart of Vincent DiNino, although wounded and hurt, still contained the capacity to love, as Carmen said. He told me numerous times, although difficult to go on without her, he knew that he had to live his life. He reacquainted himself with friends, everyone here at the Acres, and also my mom, Tim, who he has known since 1955. My brother Patrick picked up Mom one day and took her for a serendipitous lunch meeting with Vince in Fredericksburg. And after a few emails back and forth between the two, the next thing you know, she's calling me, sounding as giddy as a schoolgirl, telling me that Vince has asked her to dinner and another get-together. Always wry sense of humor, he would tell me, "Jeffrey, I am auditioning for your mother." Their courtship was like watching two high school kids fall in love. Their shared music of love, the arts, and their general intellectual attraction for one another created a unique bond between them two. A loving bond was later joined in marriage. He loved my mom for who she was, for the life they had together, and for their companionship. Every time I would call home, he would answer the phone and says, "Jeffrey, your mother is doing well." Their marriage meant his being immediately joined to a large, boisterous family of 5 gregarious stepsons, numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and a large contingent of in-laws. Vince's heart embraced everyone with open arms and unconditional love. Their marriage also brought to our family his own children, Diana and Carmen. Carmen and Rick have become very close friends, and we have both leaned on each other these past months, and we very much cherish this new bond. Vince and I had many heart-to-heart conversations. As a result of these little chats, we became very close friends and confidants. After his move back to Austin several years ago, we would gather for lunch. And I can tell you, catfish on Fridays is no longer the same. Usually at these luncheons, Vince and my dad, my brothers, and whoever else was around, they would talk with the most amazing recall of stories that happened back in the 50s and 60s about some event, some gig, some tune that they had played at some gig, and we just sat there listening with just great joy. And to hear all these stories was marvelous, and we loved every minute of it. This heart of Vincent DiNino embraced love of all things, love of people, love of food, and love of a good martini. And he had a love of all things new also. His appetite for keeping current and knowing what was going on around him in the world kept him very in the heart. Even at 90-plus years, he embraced things that he could have never imagined as a child of the Roaring Twenties. The same sort of things that our children today know by the time they're 4 or 5. As an example, several years ago he called me up and said, "Jeffrey, my boy, we must go down and get me one of those new phones. I want to have a phone that I can talk to and one that will talk back to me." And I told Vince, "Are you serious? This is way too much technology for you, Vince." And he insisted that he must get this new phone. So we trotted down, got him a new iPhone. And he eventually learned how to use this iPhone after taking a few lessons from my young 13-year-old son. His passion to embrace new things, his passion to learn, passion to keep young has always been a great inspiration to me. Days when I wake up, mind you, I'm barely half his age. And I tell myself I'm having a rough day. And I think about Vince at 95, as he climbs up that ladder to conduct the eyes in front of 100,000 fans last year at the alumni game. And I say to myself, if he's climbing that ladder, so am I. And I tell myself, get up and get moving. Just as Vince loved us, I say to you, stay young, love one another. All these attributes we model and reinforce to all of us every day. This incredible heart of Vincent DiNino. Last month when he passed, I said, Gabriel has blown his horn, but you can better bet the house that Gabriel was tuning up, shining that horn, getting everyone in line, standing at attention, because Gabriel knew that Vince DiNino was now directing a band of a higher authority. On behalf of our collective family, Carmen, Diana, and all my brothers, gracious and sincere thank you to everyone for making today possible. To be able to name everyone would be impossible because there's such a long list. We can't thank you enough for all the kind gestures that you have done and for all the work that you've put forward to make this celebration so great. From the bottom of our heart, thank you. May God bless dance. Welcome, Dan.
It encouraged to many of us backstage as we were listening, the friendliness and communication style that Jeff has, just like Mr. DiNino. And Carmen, who looks like a pretty Mr. DiNino. I did have a ball, he wrote in that email to Professor Junkin. I had a ball living a long and varied life with all you wonderful people. And how I love those Longhorn bands. 4 exclamation marks. And the individuals that were so important to me. Great drum majors, good presidents, terrific section leaders. In just a moment, we'll talk more with those folks that were drum majors and section leaders, and they'll share their wonderful memories. But Mr. DiNino made a request that when the day came, he wanted nothing more than for his dear friend and former student, Randall Bass, to create an arrangement of his favorite tunes. Mr. Junkin, am I in the right place? Okay. I got to listen to what they were saying, and my papers fell down, and I picked them up, and I think it was in the wrong. Randall Bass got the call, and he said, well, he was in the middle of writing a whole thing, it's on a deadline, and he said, you know what, there's nothing more important. The film score is what he was doing. So what you're about to hear is called 4 for Vince. I have a hunch this is something that will be around for a long time. These are Mr. D's favorite songs, and they appear in this order. The Shadow of Your Smile. Put Your Dreams Away. If ever I would leave you, and someone to watch over.
I'm Scott Harmon. I was in the band from 1968 to 1976. It was actually a graduate school. I tried my best to stay here as long as I could. I turned down a position at a famous Northeastern Institute of Technology to stay here to be drum major, so it was a wise forever. A few years ago, well, before that, Tim had asked me to speak a little bit about the relationship of the section leaders and drum majors and Mr. D. And so I'm going to do that, and some of this will be personal reminiscence, but I think it applied to everybody who went through the program. A few years ago, I was visiting the band hall, and they were cleaning out the cave where the secretary kept their files, and I found a bunch of old folders and letters that were going to be thrown away, so I just kind of perused through there and found the letter that I'd written to Mr. D when I was a senior in high school and drum major of my high school band. I just wrote to him and said, I want to be drum major of the Longhorn Band. How do I do that? I'm pretty good. I'm sure the old men had a great time reading that letter when he posted it. The letter was stapled to, my letter was stapled to Mr. D's reply, which was written on the old band stationery that went in the little stick figure band and walking all around the perimeter. But, so I read through that, and Mr. D's letter was very polite, but I took it as kind of a brush off. I thought, who is this guy, you know? But there was a start of a long conversation that we've had for 46 years. And I can remember to this day the first words that Mr. D said to me when freshman band. And they had a great impact on me. I remember, it's hard to not remember what they did for me, but I should probably just share those with you right now. Mr. D said to me, Harmon, get in step! I wasn't more than 150 yards away from the ladder. I don't know how I knew who I was. The eyes of Texas may be upon you, but the eyes of DiNino were really upon you. He didn't miss a thing. I was out of step because I was busy, mesmerized by watching Dick Robinson, one of our great drum majors, and the man who the Robinson block, which you saw last night, was named for. He was running this rehearsal just like clockwork, with 250 freshmen, all the section leaders. The directors never got involved at all. I was in awe of what this man could do as a drum major. Then I realized that Mr. D's letter was not a brush-off, it was a challenge. He said, if you want to be drum major of this band, you've got to be able to do this. You have to be able to lead with Longhorn bandsmen on the field and off. And that was a challenge I decided to accept. I will always be grateful to the University of Texas for the outstanding engineering education that I received. But it was the 7 years I spent at Mr. D's side with his personal graduate level course in leadership that gave me the skills that I use every day. He created a system that allowed everyday average bandsmen to become great bandsmen. And he could have led from the ladder, he could have done this just by running the show by himself, because he was certainly capable of doing that. But instead, he worked to make each student part of the band, to grow and to be a better person and a better bandsman throughout all the way that it went. So Mr. D built a great system for the band by building a system that turned good people into great ones. And the question is, does it work? I think all of you sitting out here are a good example. The 700 people in the Longhorn Alumni Band last night, a good example. They come back every year because of what Mr. D taught them. So the lessons I learned from Mr. D on this that I think stick with me the most is, if you want to build a great system or a great band or a great business, first you've got to get good people. Then you have to find a way to challenge and motivate them to be better than they thought they could be. And he was an outstanding leader in that way. Then you've got to turn them loose. You've got to step back and give them the room to do their job as they could do it, to take advantage of their intelligence and their imagination. And for, like a great symphony conductor melding a bunch of soloists into a great symphony orchestra, Mr. D did the same thing with us in the band. The question you gave, I was talking to Joe Hernandez last night. Joe was in the band with me, tuba player, great tuba player. Could play notes in the tuba that I couldn't reach with my piccolo. Joe, that says a lot for Joe's ability, not for mine. But Joe was telling me that he was a band director in South Texas and that he was using DiNino's system, as he called it. And to turn these bands around, to give the kids the power to learn how to be leaders and learn how to take responsibility of what has to be done. I said a lot of band directors wouldn't trust the kids. He said, you have to trust the kids. And that was Mr. D's deal. He would trust you to do your job as best you can. When you called me in his office to tell me I was going to be food section leader, he read me the riot act. Your section will be ready on time. It will play properly. There will be no mistakes if it is at your head. Then he spent an hour going over what had to be done and the section he was putting me into and how to deal with the people in there. And it was a wonderful education. So I held a lot of offices in band, and I say that not because of that I was elected, but because Mr. D gave me the chance to work with Mr. D daily for 7 years. It was the best 7 years of my life. He was like a father to me. So, in conclusion, I guess what you're looking at here today, you look at the band last night, the wonderful alumni band show, the two bands going forward together. All of this is a result of Mr. D and the way he trusted the students, the way he loved the bandsmen, the way he cared about us, and influenced all of us to do the things that we couldn't otherwise have thought about doing perhaps. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak, but not just for myself, but obviously for the section leaders and for the bandsmen who made us band what it is today. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Bob Foster, and I was in the Longhorn Band from 1957 to 1961. And during that time, I was the trumpet section leader and band president. Vince DiNino was my friend and mentor for nearly 60 years. Next to my father, no other individual had such an impact on my life and my career. My first year at the University of Texas was 1957. The same year, Darrell Royal arrived, and Mr. D's third year. I had first met Mr. D in the summer of 1956 when he came to South Texas as a guest clinician at the music camp my dad ran in Corpus Christi. I did not know it at the time, but it was just one of many recruiting trips that he made across the state of Texas, meeting students, parents, and administrators, and selling them on the University of Texas and his Longhorn Band. The modest size and quality of his first UT band is well documented, but by the time I got there, things were starting to change. That 1957 band was a 120-member all-male band, the biggest UT band in history, and it was a big band for those days. It was certainly the biggest band that most of us had ever been in. We went to the Sugar Bowl that year, the first of many great years with a great combination of Darrell Royal, a great football coach, and Vincent DiNino, a great band director. That Sugar Bowl was in the old Sugar Bowl Stadium before the dome was built, and it was one of the coldest Sugar Bowl games in history. That we went there to experience it in the South, and it was cold. The band's uniform that year was a combination of the old military-style trousers with a new light white cotton shirt with a Western-style orange yoke, with white shoes and those great white Stetsons that every opponent in the conference seemed to want to steal. The temperature at game time was freezing. We had no coach, we had no overcoats, and we were dying. Traveling with us that year was the Dean of Students, Arno Nowotny, a very popular administrator who was right there with us, wearing his heavy overcoat, warm hat, and gloves. Mr. D used to say that it was that experience with the Dean of Students with a freezing band that led to the new set of uniforms for the fall of 1958. Western style with a zigzag orange stripe down the leg of the white pants and the orange Western style yoke with fringe. It was a good looking uniform and it was an exciting time. By 1958, the band numbered 108, and the next year it reached 200, and it continued to grow. By 1960, the band numbered in the mid-200s, and a pattern was set for the future, a pattern which has continued to the great band we have today. This was a period of great change and transition, not only for the Longhorn Band, but also for the state of Texas. Mr. D had made it a point to get to know band directors and people who could help financially, but also people who could help politically. He had developed friendships of people who could and did make a difference. D. Harold Bird in Dallas became a big supporter of the Longhorn Band, and we all benefited from it. I was fortunate to get to go to college on a full tuition scholarship. In 1957, my Longhorn Band scholarship was $25. But that covered tuition. By my third year, I was on D. Harold Bird scholarship, and that was a whole lot better. With the financial and other support of people like Mr. Bird, the band started being included in the elegant lunch buffets of the Texas Exes in Dallas at the OU game. Politically, this was the era of John Connally, who was still Secretary of the Navy, Senior Senator Lyndon Johnson, and Junior Senator Ralph Yarborough. Politics were crazy in Texas, just as today. Connally became governor, and Lyndon Johnson became the candidate for vice president on the Kennedy-Johnson ticket. When people needed music in this era, they frequently called Vince DiNino, and a Longhorn Band-style Dixieland jazz group would play at lots of these political rallies and other events. Playing with drummer Budge Mabry, tenor sax Chuck Jones, and other Longhorn Band guys, we played lots of these gigs, and Mr. D was always there with us. When John Kennedy and Johnson won the election, we played the victory party at the Driscoll Hotel, and a big long party it was, going far into the night. How many ways can you play Happy Days Are Here Again? We may have set a record that night. With Kennedy and Johnson winning that election, it seemed logical and appropriate for the Longhorn Band to represent Texas and march in the inaugural parade in Washington, something no Longhorn Band had ever done. The big problems were that we did not have an invitation, and we had no way to get there. The Longhorn Band needed political clout. I was band president, and we put out a call that we needed anyone who had any political connections, and we needed them fast. Clarinetist Kate Davis, now Kay Miller, came up after the rehearsal and said her roommate knew Senator Ralph Yarborough. Well, we had to meet this girl, and we needed her help. Kay brought Becky Cox to the old band building in World War II barracks across from the stadium, and Becky got us, Becky, Mr. D, and me, an appointment with Senator Yarborough. Senator Yarborough got us the invitation and made a few phone calls and arranged free transportation at DC-6 and DC-9 to fly the band to Washington, and free housing on an Army base near Washington. And that is how the Longhorn Band got to Washington for our first inaugural parade. That is also how I met my wife. I married Becky, and she's been my wife for the last 54 years. Join the Longhorn Band, and strange and wonderful things can happen. Through these and countless other opportunities and adventures, we got to know both Vince and Jane DiNino really well. They became two of our closest friends, a relationship that lasted the rest of their lives. Vince DiNino was a great mentor and role model for thousands of us former students. He was also a father figure. His infectious laugh, strong, compelling voice, determination, and contagious enthusiasm were all factors that contributed to his knack for leadership. He was easy to follow. His memory of the names of his former students was unique and very special. He seemed to always remember not just who you were, but a lot of other things about your life and career. We are fortunate and honored to have been a part of the Longhorn Band, and it remains one of the most important experiences of our lives. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of these adventures with you, and I count myself fortunate to have known this great leader and to have been in his band. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Don Mayer, 66. I venture to say there's not a former student of Vince that did not benefit profoundly from having been associated with him. We all look back at our years as students and remember those outstanding professors that made such an impression and influenced our lives. Vince is likely to be very near the top with all of us. You know, there are statements from thousands of his former students, and I might add his closest friends, as all the students were, would be unique, but I trust there would be a similar theme in all. Comments that I have received, and I'm going to mention a few here, quote a few. Even with his commanding presence, Mr. D insisted that we, his students, take on essential leadership roles, assisting him and Mrs. D in making the Longhorn Band truly exemplary. He inspired excellence and tremendous pride in being part of something great and always doing our best, no matter the task. That feeling of pride has never gone away. Another said, Mr. D became my hero when he arrived as our new director. He was a man with a great sense of humor and ability to transform a good band into a show band in the Southwest. We worked hard and had fun, a very fun time, with a man who had the energy and talent to pull us all together. 40 years later, we saw each other at a game, and he came up to me and called me by name. Imagine that. A great mentor, a role model, inspiration for thousands of student musicians. All of us who were fortunate to be part of Mr. D's outstanding program benefited greatly from his leadership, his organization, his motivation, and his focus. The positive influence has continued over the next 50 plus years. Another said he was my professor in many music education classes, and his lessons, both as director of the Longhorn Band and as a professor in music, were vital to my success after graduation. I was honored to call him my mentor, my friend. Now I'd like to share a short story that is pretty typical of Vince. There was a young band director, a former student. He called Mr. D and explained he was having difficulties with his high school band. These problems were not anything he had learned to deal with as a student here at UT, and he wondered whether Mr. D might have any suggestions. The problems seemed to be that the older high school boys were being disrespectful, disruptive in band. Well, Mr. D drove nearly 100 miles one way to clinic that band. After excusing the director, Mr. D's commanding presence captured the undivided attention of the entire membership of the band, and probably more especially the troublemakers. As he elegantly expressed how fortunate they were to have such an outstanding and talented director, a person that was an exceptional member of the Longhorn Band and a great student in the School of Music. An hour later, Mr. D was on his way back to Austin. Problem solved. The band became a very successful band. From the admiral who commanded one of our nuclear submarines through the Cold War, to the engineers who design and build our magnificent structures, our buildings, our planes, our rockets, to the architects, to those in the business fields, to those in the performing arts, the health fields, the astronaut and many pilots of our military and commercial aircraft, the professors, the researchers, other educators in so many different fields. All of us are better able to accomplish our task in life by the lessons learned from being associated with Vince. His lessons were all directed to being successful in life. He stressed academics and doing the right thing. He taught us skills we didn't realize we were learning. He taught by example. Pursuing excellence in every endeavor, precision, discipline, teamwork, leadership, dedication to each other, and having an extreme sense of pride in all we do. Above all, being a positive representative of the Longhorn Band and the University of Texas. Under his leadership, the Longhorn Band became the most visible and easily recognized symbol of and a true ambassador of the university. The show band of the Southwest brought changes to university bands and high school bands everywhere. As his students spread, so did his talents and his leadership. This happened not only in music, but in so many different fields. What Vince started here really did change so many people and continues to change others through his students. As former students, we are thankful for the guidance and the inspiration and for so many great, great memories. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rex Tillerson. I was in the Longhorn Band from 1970 to 74. I served as the percussion section leader from 1972 to 1974. And when I was contacted by Jerry Junkin to speak at this celebration of life, I was obviously very stunned on the one hand, but profoundly honored that Mr. D would want me to share a few of my reflections with you this morning. So I want to do that in a couple of stories. And I think first, all of us know that, any of us certainly that were in the band under Mr. D's leadership, we all know how tough he was and how disciplined he was and how demanding he was in his pursuit of perfection, so that in the end, what he produced on the field had a high standard of excellence. So he was very demanding in rehearsals, very demanding on the field. My first 2 years I was in the band, I was assigned as one of the two bass drummers before I moved to the snare band in 72 when I became a percussion section leader. And I remember one of those early rehearsals, here I'm an 18-year-old freshman over in Memorial Stadium, that's where we rehearsed back then. Mr. D was on that giant tower that he borrowed from Darrell Royal so he could get up high so he could really see what was going on and spot out of his peripheral vision anyone who wasn't achieving perfection. And he had that bullhorn and that whistle. And so we were rehearsing, and at some point, you know, Mr. DiNino liked to kind of change the tempo. Sometimes he would speed things up and sometimes he would slow things down. I guess he was looking for that perfect effect. And so we were rehearsing, and all of a sudden, the whistle goes off from the tower, and he's yelling over the bullhorn, halt, halt, halt! And he calls Frank Ditmar, the other freshman bass drummer, and myself, and says, you guys step out. And we got the dressing down of our lives for not keeping up with his changing tempo. Well, it was obviously very embarrassing. What I learned is that you can grow eyes in the back of your head, so you can What I later learned from that, in talking to him, and he talked to us afterwards because he realized that was a pretty traumatic experience for a couple of 18-year-olds. His point was that, look, I realize you play the bass drum, and you may not think that's real important because you don't have to read music, you don't have to know what key you're playing in. But you need to understand, when we've got this band stretched out wall to wall, you're the only thing that keeps them together. And his point was, everybody's got an important job to do. And this is your job, and it's really important, and you have to do it well. That's a lesson that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Now, what I also knew, and all of us know, off the field, no one was more genuinely caring and concerned about every single member of that band than Mr. D. And that was made very evident to me in the spring of 1971, in my freshman year. I came to the band office in symphonic band rehearsal, and I was handed a note from Mr. D's assistant to see him in his office, which was kind of unusual. So I went down to his office, not knowing what to expect, and he was sitting behind that great executive desk of his in that big leather executive chair. But I came in and he said, have a seat. He got up and came around the desk, and he said, I need to tell you that your grandfather died the other night. And I was very close to my grandfather. And Mr. D delivered that news with so much care and so much compassion. And then he said, I want you to come around and sit in my chair. And he had written down on a little piece of notepad by his phone. He said, here are the dialing instructions on how to dial long distance from my phone. He said, your mother and father are up in Wichita Falls, and they're expecting you to call. because I could hear band rehearsal had already started down the hall. And he shook my hand, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, look, if you want to just take the afternoon off and go on back to your room, he said, that would be perfectly understandable. Or he said, you go down this hall, and in that room, there's a whole room full of your friends. And then he said, whatever you decide is going to be right for you. And he went on down the hall. Of course, I followed him down the hall, but into the room full of my friends. The second story I want to share with you is what I call the magic of Mr. DiNino's baton. You know, it really is something when you go to a UT football game and Mr. D would get on that ladder, 50-yard line, and he'd raise that baton, point to his eyes, and he'd hit that finger at the drum line, start that drum roll, and 80,000+ people have their attention on him. And for very few moments, 80,000+ students, alumni, fans are united as one, in one voice, singing the Eyes of Texas with one spirit from one heart. It is the power of what music can do. Well, I saw that demonstrated when we took a trip to Lima, Peru. We went down there on a goodwill mission with the Texas Partners for Peru. The second time I'd ever flown on an airplane. Now I live on an airplane. First passport I ever got to leave the country. And now I'm on my 12th passport because they'll only let you add so many pages before they make you get a new one. But I still have that first passport. They were Army Green back then. And that passport is my stamp of entry to Lima, Peru with the Longhorn Band. Well, while we were down in Lima, we had learned a song called Peru Campeon. It's a song that had been composed to celebrate the Peruvian national soccer team's championship. And Mr. D had us learn that song so we could play it down there. Well, one day we had been doing some concerts and we were in a plaza area in downtown Lima, great big, all these big roundabouts, about 5 lanes of traffic going around and around, big monument in the middle. And he just decided out of the blue we were going to have this impromptu concert on the middle of that plaza. So we got up on this plaza, and of course the first thing he does is he strikes up Peru Campeon. The traffic around that plaza stopped, and it was packed. People on the sidewalk stopped. People came out of the shops on the sidewalk, and in one voice, together, united for that one moment, singing Peru Campeon, the words. It was an enormous impression on all of us who were there. The magic of that baton. Well, what I really remember best about Mr. D, though, came many years after I completed my time here on 40 acres. And would come back from time to time when I had a chance, and I would always go by to call on him. And all of us know his uncanny recall abilities. And when you would go to see Mr. D, what I tell people is, it was a joyous moment. As you walk into Mr. D's office, if he was there, I'd approach him if he was sitting somewhere, he would leap up, huge, joyous look on his face. Rex, my golly, how are you? He just made you feel like you were the most important person on the planet. And then he'd proceed to ask you about your kids and your mother and dad, and are they still living here? Everybody's name. He wanted an update on everyone. He remembered it all. And so what I remember about Mr. D, he was a joyous person. Whenever you left those brief encounters with him, even if it was only for a couple of minutes, you felt uplifted. I felt uplifted. And so the other lesson I learned is how easy it is to lift other people up. And whenever I want to do that, I have that image of Mr. DiNino when I would see him, that huge smile on his face, just lifting me up. So glad to see me. Well, from the period of 1960 to 2010, there have been 11 of my family members at one time or another who have been members of the Show Band of Southwest. And the university has a slogan, what starts here changes the world. It's not really a slogan, it's a statement of fact. And we change the world by the impact we have on people. And Mr. DiNino touched so many people and their lives changed how they were going to turn out. And they've gone out into the world, they're changing the world. So, the 11 family members of mine, my 2 sisters, Joanne and Marianne, who have had the privilege of coming through that tunnel, stepping off the March Grandioso, and all that we learned here, directly under Mr. DiNino or through the legacy of the show band of the Southwest, stays with us today, continues to influence us today, and will continue to influence us till Gabriel blows his horn.
Thanks also to Dr. Don Baer, Robert Foster, who is the Director of Bands Emeritus, University of Kansas, and Scott Harmon, the hilarious drummer. You've been sitting for quite a few minutes enjoying those stories. I'd like to invite you to stand right now. Just go ahead and stand and maybe stretch just a second. And let's also remember that a truly representative celebration of Mr. DiNino's life would not be complete without talking about his wonderful friendship with Coach Darrell Royal. Those two loved each other. And you know, Coach Royal loved country music. And they would talk about that quite often. As a fan of country music, Coach Royal knew about a 1936 song by Roy Acuff. You remember, don't you? Wabash Cannonball? Sure. It actually sold 10 million copies, which is amazing, especially for back in that day. But in 1969, another Mr. D, Danny Davis, who was an instrumentalist, Danny Davis of Nashville Brass. Does anybody remember that group? Yeah, 1969. Coach Royal loved them. They came out with an album called Moving On. And he heard an instrumental version of Wabash Cannonball. So he shot over to Mr. D and said, "Can you do it?" Mr. D called his Minnesota buddy, Red McLeod, and ladies and gentlemen, I'd invite you now to turn around and pretend we're about to start the 4th quarter. Because it worked yesterday. Join, clap your hands, your Longhorn Band. Wabash Cannonball. Could not be with us this morning because he's actually chairing a meeting in Washington, D.C. of the AAU, but representing the university administration is a very popular dean, the dean of the College of Fine Arts. And I don't know why deans aren't very popular, but this one is, because it's the University of Texas and because it is Douglas Dempster. Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Dempster.
In this really wonderful gathering of speakers, families, and friends, current and former band members, I have to reckon that I am one of the most recent friends and admirers of Vince DiNino. We met only 7 years ago at the memorial service for Jane DiNino in Fredericksburg, shortly after her passing. I was, of course, I'll admit to you, fulfilling a duty, a small act of respect of a new dean for two people who were longtime legends on the 40 acres. In fact, it's an occasion much like this one. It says a great deal more about Vince DiNino than it does about me that he never forgot that small gesture. He never failed to thank me, effusively, even years later, for being one of hundreds who attended that occasion. And he frequently did that in public in his characteristically warm-hearted manner. That became the basis of a warm, lasting, though much too short friendship. And I think it gave him license to boom out at me whenever I was within 100 yards of his cannon-shot voice. "Hello, Dean!" Stay in step. Hearing from the other speakers, I realized I was getting off lightly. He did know how to get your attention. I count it among the great honors of my career that he included my name in the very detailed, carefully arranged, just-in-case directions for this occasion. And I bring to you, Timothy, and to the DiNino and Sloan family, and all of you, those of you gathered today, the sympathies and respect of President Bill Powers. We admire Vince, Mr. D, for creating the show band of the Southwest. But even more, we admire him for running the Longhorn Band like a large, yes, well-organized, but caring extended family. We've heard that theme over and over. That's really his greater legacy. He was the patriarch of that family every moment of his life since 1955 and to this very day. Long after he retired, he was involved in the daily life of the band, often picking up the baton, climbing the ladder to lead the band in March Grandioso. But I want you to know, too, how quietly generous he was to the Longhorn Band, to the larger Butler School band program, to the director of our bands, Jerry Junkin and Rob Carnahan, and to me as dean. Of course, he was quick with his good-humored advice, whether we needed it or not. But he also supported the band program to the very limits, I believe, of his financial capacity and energy. No one chooses to become a musician or band director as a get-rich-quick scheme, believe me. Certainly not a sensible Kansan and a son of the bandmaster. He knew what he was in for. But Vince could not give enough to this band. He was responsible for endowing the Vincent and Jane DiNino chair for the director of bands, which is now held by Professor Junkin. That's a hugely generous and ambitious gift. And he was in the process of raising funds. As I'm sure many of you know, he was in that process irrepressibly of raising funds for every other aspect of this band program, from student scholarships to faculty endowments. There was no one in this program he did not want to support, and he will want us to hang together to support this band like a family. Too much, too big, too hard, those words just were not in Vince DiNino's vocabulary. It's a wonder to me that he wasn't born in Texas. His is a legacy for the ages. The University of Texas is a much bigger, grander, and more Texas place because of him. Thank you. Thanks.
Vincent R. DiNino arrived on the University of Texas campus with a charge and a vision to take the 70 students in his very first class and transform them into a band worthy of the state's flagship public university. Over the next 2 decades, he proceeded to do just that, and in the process, created the greatest college band in the land, known as the Show Band of the Southwest. Mr. D, as he is affectionately known, understood immediately that the University of Texas needed a band that reflected its unique character. And within just a few years, he adopted many of the sights and the sounds that today are considered icons of the Longhorn Band. Well, there's Big Bertha, Western-style coats and Stetson hats, Script, Texas, Cowbell, the Longhorn Alumni Band,
Grandioso, Shotgun Texas, and a Wabash Cannonball all had their beginnings in the DiNino era. He recruited tirelessly across our great state and brought together a group of student musicians that was and is the envy of college bands throughout the nation. Vincent DiNino saw positive possibilities in every person and situation and instilled that sense of optimism in his students. Generations of Longhorn Band members have performed under his direction, and their lives have been touched by his generous spirit, his vision, and his belief that the Longhorn Band can and should and will rise to even greater heights of excellence. His qualities of imagination, creativity, and service live on in all who are part of the Longhorn Band family. In retirement, Mr. D continued to support and influence the Longhorn Band in countless ways. At the age of 95 years young, he conducted the band throughout the entire 2013 season, gave selflessly of his time, and gave generously of his own resources with the establishment of numerous student scholarships. Vincent R. DiNino's legacy. It's one of excellence, and his greatest gift is the unwavering belief that the eyes of Texas truly are upon all of us.
And what a moment now, what a moment last night. And how many great moments do we owe to Paula Kreiner, who served as the band director originally at the historic Crockett High School, where she won not one but two 5A marching band championships. She then came to UT, served 14 years as the associate director of the Longhorn Band, before then serving as 4 years as the director. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Paula Kreiner.
Vincent R. DiNino was on my first day on campus. I had just gone to Gregory Gym to that chaos called registration back in the day. And I walked out and I heard the sounds of a marching band, and I was drawn like a magnet to find where the sounds were coming from. I found them in Memorial Stadium, and there was this whirling dervish of a man on the podium rehearsing the band. I'd never seen anything like it. When they took a break, I walked up and I said, "Mr. DiNino, my name is Paula Kreiner, and I'm going to be in graduate school this year." And as only DiNino could, he said, "Yes, yes." And he had this amazing way, you know that, he had this amazing way of making people feel as if just knowing your name was a great accomplishment. And of course, he never forgot it. When I began teaching at Crockett High School, Mr. D invited me to come and guest conduct the Longhorn Summer Band, and he chose a march for me to conduct called Chimes of Liberty. Now, one might suppose that the percussion section would intuit that with a title like Chimes of Liberty, there might be a chime part. But as we cycled the march, we got about 8 bars before the first chime solo, and I looked back, and there wasn't a percussionist within 20 yards of the chimes. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a bore of motion. Mr. DiNino had been sitting behind me in front of the band, and he raced around the clarinet section. He grabbed the chime mallet and right in tempo, bam, played the chime. He smiled at me and then gave that other look to the band. Now, all the left-brain people in the audience have already done the math. Typical march tempo, 120 beats, only 8 measures out. That's about what he did, was in about 8 seconds, covered 30 yards to get to that chime. And he did it in cowboy boots. But we all know that Vincent R. DiNino never did anything by half measure. He was always full steam ahead. He saw something that needed doing, and he got it done. The speed of Mr. D's life was allegro vivace. And all those years ago, I never dreamed that I'd ever have the privilege of serving as director of the Longhorn Band. And it is a privilege. We Longhorn Band directors work with the best and the brightest students on this campus, students with an uncommon dedication. They have the discipline to keep on keeping on. They'll do it right once, and they'll do it right 10 times, and they'll do it 10 more times just to make sure that perfection is reached. Students will put on that polyester uniform in triple-digit Texas heat, sweat pouring down like acid into their eyes and never move a muscle because they're in attention. There are flags who will battle gale force winds, percussionists who play until their hands bleed, because as you know, win or lose, the Longhorn Band never stops supporting our athletic teams. Rain, sleet, snow, flood, pestilence, fans from other schools who throw empty adult beverage bottles at the band. And we say, bring it on. The Longhorn Band members have never faced a challenge that they couldn't conquer. Longhorn Band members are exceptional. They're willing to do whatever it takes, not only to live up to the Longhorn Band standard, but to keep raising the bar so that each successive generation creates an even better band. This is how we repay a debt of gratitude to the man whose vision created the show band in the Southwest. As evidenced by the wonderful remarks of our alumni band members, you know, these people grow up to do great things. They're innovators, they're leaders, they're movers and shakers. They make a difference in this world. And we directors, past and present, form a really very exclusive club. We are the ones who know what feels like the pride to lead this band into DKR Memorial Stadium, or to stand up at the end of a game on that ladder and with a hey up and a flick of the wrist, bring thousands of people to their feet to join and sing in the eyes of Texas. It just doesn't get any better than that. And we enjoy these traditions and many, many more because of Vincent R. DiNino. These traditions he established are an integral part of the University of Texas and are as iconic as our tower, hook 'em horns, or B-roll. And I know you're familiar with the quote by Bernardo Schachter, who said, "If I've seen further, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants." Vincent R. DiNino is a giant. You notice I use present tense because his spirit lives on every time the Longhorn Band takes the field. He began a tradition of excellence that's made the Longhorn Band a class act that is absolutely, positively, irrefutably second to none, and always will be. And we're so much the richer for having known him. And I imagine that when Mr. D arrived at those proverbial pearly gates, I hear in my mind's ear, the voice sounds kind of like Bill Livingston, for those of you from that generation. And the voice says, "I am St. Peter, welcome." DiNino says, "Yes, yes." And he paces impatiently waiting for the gates of heaven to open so that he can reconnect with those thousands of Longhorn Band members whom he unfortunately were gone before. And I know what he's doing. He's bringing them all together. He'll have a rehearsal. They'll share stories. They'll remember what it felt like to be young, to wear that distinctive orange and white uniform with pride, knowing that they experienced something so special, so precious, that there are no words to express what it means to be a part of the Longhorn Band. No words, but each has memories that will last a lifetime and beyond. Mr. D will once again raise his baton. Sounds of Eyes of Texas will fill the heavens. The sunset will be burnt orange, and all will be right with the world.
Well, the very few directors in the history of the Longhorn Band would tell you that they are lucky and that they are blessed to be in that position. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think you would agree that thanks to Mr. DiNino, we are the ones who are lucky and blessed. Folks like Professor Kreiner and Dr. Robert Carnahan, who received his Doctor of Musical degree in band from UT, during which time he served as a teaching assistant for the Longhorn Band. In order to make a living, he was forced to run off to Oklahoma, take a few jobs, and Colorado, and then returned to the University of Texas as director of the Longhorn Band in 2003. And what a wonderful era this is for LHB. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Robert Carnahan.
today's date in 1918. And by the end of his nearly 93 years, I was extremely fortunate to know how much he cared for me, how much he loved me, and I knew how proud he was of me, of what I had accomplished in my life by the end of his. Vince DiNino was born on October 25th, 1918, 6 days in the same year after my father. Quite the coincidence given the profound effect that both of these men have had in my life. While Vince and I enjoyed a wonderful and mutually respectful friendship since my arrival back in 2002, following my dad's passing a little over 3 years ago, Vince became not just a man I respected for his friendship and mentorship, but a man I loved like my own dad. As I told him and all those in attendance last year at his 95th birthday party in Matagorda, he is my band dad. During the years that Vince lived in Austin, just before moving to Bay City with his now wife, Timothy Ann, he would stop by the band hall on a regular basis. He would attend our staff meetings, sit in on Wind Symphony rehearsals and LHB rehearsals, come to our concerts, and of course attend all the football games to climb the ladder and conduct the Eyes of Texas each Saturday. In addition to seeing him at all these events, he and I also made weekly plans to share lunch, coffee, or perhaps some fine single malt scotch at a happy hour or two in a week. During these get-togethers, and the years to follow, is when I had the opportunity yet again to know the feeling of love and pride for my dad, this time my band dad. As many of you know, and has been documented today, Vince jumped on the email bandwagon with great gusto, as he did everything in life. Those who have received the email from Vince know that of his unique use and remarkable use of punctuation. The exclamation key, the question mark key, the caps lock key are completely worn out on his computer. I have no doubt. Not only did he use these punctuations at the ends of sentences, but he would use them in the middle of sentences just for accentuation. I'd like to share just a few emails, some of the hundreds that he sent me just in the last couple of years, that I think illustrate his love of life, his deep compassion, and especially his love of the people that make up the Longhorn Band family. Only 3 years ago, June 17th, 2011. See if you and Karen can stop by our place, say 6:30, one exclamation. We can sample some of that wee bit of single malt, question mark, and then proceed for a night on the town, 4 exclamation points. Tim has made reservations at Sullivan's for 7:30, and then we'll go across the street to Maria Maria for some salsa with the band The Brew, all caps, exclamation point. He was 93. The next morning, June 18th, 2011. Good morning, exclamation point. King of the salsa dancers, 16 exclamation points. My partner this morning is complaining that her feet hurt, 4 exclamation points. What with all of her yumping around last night, in quotations, I can understand that, 5 exclamations. We, 4 exclamations, had a grand time, all caps, with you two, 5 exclamation points. A few months later, September 12th, 2011. This was when my father was in failing health. This morning, I learned that you had returned to your parents' home to see especially your dad, as well as your dear mother. Please extend my best wishes to them both, and tell your father, since we are, all caps, age brothers, to hang in there, and I will be thinking of them as well as you, 4 exclamation points. Love to all, 11 exclamation points. The weekend of my father's funeral, November 5th, 2011. Professors and directors, 5 exclamations. I must congratulate the distinguished conductors, one Dr. Scott Hanna and my Italian compatriot, Anthony Marinello, upon delivering an excellent rehearsal pregame halftime performance during the Texas Tech game. So Scott, 5 exclamations. Commendations are in the highest order, 4 exclamations. Job well done. VRD. The next spring, April 24th, 2012. Good morning, Roberto. 10 exclamations. I'm happy to see you at the end of the LHB concert last night, but I was there. Enjoyed them all, 4 exclamations, in their many ensembles and bands. Also enjoyed seeing once again the grads in their conducting stints. Jackie, as always, mighty impressive. Dan, as the Circus Carl King conductor, and Mark, 4 exclamations. First time I seen him in action, 2 exclamations. Dan sure sounded well, and apparently really, all caps, like him, 5 exclamations. Good show, 3 exclamations. All around, 5 exclamations. Thanks again for all you do for me. I am really most grateful and honored, 5 exclamations, to be a part of the Longhorn Band family. Vince. Last year, September 9th, 2013. Good morning, exclamation, Dr. Carnahan, 21 exclamation points. I'm not making this up, they're all there. I do not know who the unfortunate one was who took the band to Provo, Utah yesterday, but he and the LHBers deserve a medal for watching the disintegration of some false team wearing orange uniforms and appearing on national television as representing our university. 10 exclamation points. Same email. On a brighter note, 21 exclamation points. Alumni band this weekend was a smashing all-caps success in every possible way, 5 exclamations. What a wonderful turnout of all caps, your people, 10 exclamation. That portends well, all caps for the future. Love ya, 29 exclamation points. Vince. The next weekend. Good Sunday afternoon, 2 exclamations. I know that it's redundant to tell you again and again, all caps. But what a joy it is for me to see our band performing at this outstanding level, 5 exclamations. And what a great bunch of young people they are, 5 exclamations. You didn't have to get to see this, but after the pregame show, as they exit the field and come up the side aisle to their seats, so many of them stop and shake my hand that I feel like I must be running for office or something. I love it all, and what a joy it is, 5 exclamations, Vince. I know there are hundreds of you, as Vince likes to say, LHBers, who feel the same way I do. We're mourning the loss of someone we loved, celebrating the great memories we had with him throughout our time together. I'm not sure how it's possible that one man had the capacity to make so many of us feel the same way, like we were literally one of his own children. But Vincent DiNino did absolutely just that. As I told the members of this year's Longhorn Band shortly after Vince passed, thanks to E.P. Schock, Colonel Byrd, Milton Crockett, and many others, LHB is UT's band, and it's the band that Vince built to what it is today. But in my heart, it's always going to be his band. I always love you, Vince, and I will always encourage your band to play to the top of the stadium. Thank you.
Clearly, Mr. D loved it too, because he got more exclamation points than any of us ever got. I just flashed on something, I'll make it quick. I had to share it. When I was watching Dr. Carnahan speak, there's a lot of Mr. D in it. It was a week ago Saturday, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. We're all outside the hotel, and the band is completely loaded on all the, like, 37 buses. And Dr. Carnahan is standing right outside the front door, and he and I are talking. He's holding a cup of coffee. So how do you think we'll do today? You know, he's got that little smile going. All of a sudden, he spots way across the parking lot a couple of straggling members of the band that hadn't made it yet. He said, hold this cup of coffee for a minute. Like a drill sergeant. Yes, I'm with you. Hold on, we got this on. So he's going there. So, what are you doing everything? Actually, there's quite a few here, I'm sure, that know this. Not everyone does. History is important, and we'll share the word. Folks in the audience, I'm sure, like J.P. Kirsten, know that when the Longhorn Band was invited to the inauguration of President Johnson in 1964, Mr. DiNino asked John Edmonds to compose a march especially for that occasion. Now, that was officially named President Johnson's March, as you know. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is the March of the Longhorns. a lot about the special friendships of Mr. DiNino. For any of us that have a special friendship, or even get to witness two people in a special friendship, it is one of life's greatest blessings. We all got to see this friendship. One that started when Professor Jerry Junkin came to UT in the fall of 1974. He didn't realize he would be in the last Longhorn Band directed by Vincent R. DiNino. Now, it's 40 years later, and he serves as only the second director of bands in the history of the University of Texas, the other, of course, being Mr. DiNino. Please welcome the director of bands and the holder of the Vincent R. and Jane D. DiNino Chair for Director of Bands, arguably the highest honor in music at a public institution. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Jerry Junkin.
Thank you very much. As our good friend Bob Cole told us, Mr. D wanted to keep this upbeat, and we all know what he meant by that. And we've attempted to fulfill all of his wishes. To musicians, you know, upbeat also means an unaccented beat preceding an accented beat. An upbeat leads to something. Vincent R. DiNino, father, grandfather, musician, teacher, patriot, friend, confidant. His mother, as you've heard, was a Kansas-trained concert pianist and played for vaudeville and silent movies. His father, born and educated in Italy, immigrated to the United States as a professional clarinetist and had a varied career playing with concert bands and orchestras for vaudeville and movie houses before Talking Pictures came into being. Vince's earliest family recollections were related in one way or another to public musical performance, and his grandparents raised him until he was 11 years old when he joined his parents in Ely, Minnesota, where his father was now the band and orchestra director for the public schools of the city of Ely. A Midwesterner, and more specifically a Minnesotan through and through, he seized upon the opportunity that presented itself when the University of Texas was looking for its first full-time faculty member to lead the Longhorn Band. And the rest, of course, is history. Duty, decency, reliability, honor, dignity, respect. These are all qualities that Vince not only held in high esteem, but practiced every day during his time on this earth. He was a serious and disciplined man, but he could never resist the opportunity to have a laugh with friends and loved ones, given half the chance. The amazing Charles Ball, who was the longtime piano technician in the Butler School of Music, wrote to several of us last year when we had been discussing the subject of karma. He said, "Speaking of karma, I think that it is so important to continually remind ourselves that we are here for the students and that what we do and say can have a powerful impact upon their lives." Yesterday, I tuned to Steinway B for a retired accountant who is a few years older than I. On his wall were photos of his high school band and the Longhorn Band from 45 years ago. Also, a framed Western Union telegram from Vince DiNino advising him that he had been accepted into the Longhorn Band. He pointed proudly to that telegram and told me in a breaking voice that that telegram had changed his life dramatically. Vincent DiNino may have come to Texas in some degree of obscurity, but he was just too smart and too hardworking not to be noticed. Even more revealing was the twinkling in his eye, we've all seen it, as well as the glittering flame in his soul. This was the flame of hope, and it could not be extinguished. Not only could it not be extinguished, in time he used it to light hope and optimism in countless others. Most of us are aware that Vince and Jane DiNino were childhood sweethearts. They were married in 1939, a marriage that lasted over 67 years. For over 20 years, Vince and Jane were a remarkable set of foster parents to thousands of students who were members of the Longhorn Band. And I can tell you that as a freshman member of the band myself, I well remember Vince and Jane dancing up a storm, yumping all over the place, at the annual band banquet at the Villa Capri in April of 1975. Everyone who's laughing at that is an old person. was seeing then was what other students had already seen for 20 years. Two people entirely devoted to each other. Commitment. Committed to each other, committed to the University of Texas, committed to the Longhorn Band. The example of commitment. Albert Schweitzer reminded us that example is not the main thing in influencing others, it's the only thing. When Jane passed away in 2007, Vince decided that he would move back to Austin to be closer to his UT family. We loved having him nearby. All of us in this room know what a great band director Mr. D was. Well, I'm here to tell you with absolute metaphysical certainty that there has never been an emeritus band director anytime, anywhere, who offered more, was as generous with time, talent, and with his finances than Vincent R. DiNino. He came to our weekly staff meetings, attended rehearsals, always sitting in the back of the room near the horn section, which, by the way, there was never anything in the world louder than Vince attempting to whisper comments during a rehearsal. He came to every concert, football game, basketball game, volleyball match, conducting workshop, and befriended every student in the entire program. He offered all of us great advice, but only when asked. He was absolutely the gold standard and a fantastic example about how to be an emeritus anything. It was during this time back in Austin that Vince and Timothy Sloan fell in love. He was absolutely smitten with her and her him. He wrote to me with these following sentences containing his patented 11 exclamation marks. Tim and I hope to be, I could never read his without trying to do it in his voice for some reason. Tim and I hope to be best friends of my beloved Junkins. You know how I loved Jane. What a great life we had. Now I am hoping that the second time around for me will be a different but magical life as well. How lucky I am to have found these two wonderful women. Why is it that people get married? Because we need a witness to our lives. There are 7 billion people on this planet. What does any one life really mean? But in a marriage, you're promising to care about everything. The good things, the bad things, the terrible things, the mundane things, all of it. All the time, every day. You're saying, your life will not go unnoticed, because I will notice it. Your life will not go unwitnessed, because I will be your witness. With Vince in the final days with Jane, and Tim in Vince's final days, what greater thing is there for two human souls than to feel that they are joined for life? To strengthen each other in all labor, to rest on each other in all sorrow, to minister to each other in all pain, to be one with each other in silent, unspeakable memories at the moment of the last party. Vince had some health issues over the years, including a major heart attack in 1976. But one thing he did not need, as it turns out, was a heart transplant. We've heard about his heart today. If there was ever a person whose heart was his own special heart, all of the time, it was Mr. D. It was the heart of a pioneer, patriot, teacher, lover, and fierce defender and protector. Vince told me very often that he really did not like movies very much. The subject would come up, Vince, have you seen this movie? Nah, I don't really like movies. At least not recent ones. He would always talk about, movies with Marlene Dietrich or something, but not recent ones. But I'm sure that he just didn't really need them. His life, after all, the life that Vince and Jane shared, and then later the life that Vince and Tim shared, was far more dramatic and touched by human emotion than anything the imagination could put on screen. Still, I can't help but thinking of Mr. DiNino today, and I can't help but thinking about the movie It's a Wonderful Life. One line in particular seems like it was absolutely written for him. Strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives, and when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole. In my all-time favorite book, Winnie the Pooh, Pooh famously tells Christopher Robin, if you live to be 100, I want to live to be 100 minus 1 day, so I never have to live without you. is very sweet, but Pooh is a stuffed animal. And so, being such, he could not really comprehend the fact that death does not in any way end a relationship. It only changes it. Even toward the end, I never heard Vince complain about his health, but rather, when the subject would come up, he would rather ask about the current students in the band program. He was always upbeat and optimistic. Still as vitally interested in the entire program as ever. I am honored to hold the chair that bears Vince's name, created again out of his deep commitment. I will never forget the final time that he conducted the Eyes of Texas at age 95 last season. A number of us always gathered around the ladder, ready to catch him if he should falter going up. As he descended the ladder, taking his time, as he should have, with all of us poised to leap into action, to catch her, to help him if needed, he made it to the turf. We all breathed a deep sigh of relief. He turned, grinned, and announced with his inimitable flair, "The eagle has landed!" So, of course, in the days ahead, it will only be natural that we cry for Vince's absence. But we also cry for ourselves, because the man who was stronger than despair and stronger than fear has left us. For that, we mourn. But what hasn't left us is the blessing of Vincent DiNino's life and example. For that, we do not mourn. We celebrate, as was his wish, because out of his wonderful and remarkable life has come joy, inspiration, and love to each of ours. That was Vince's gift. His glittering life touched ours. How do we indicate our love and respect for this great man? Well, we felt as though we needed some sort of permanent plaque or monument in the band room that he built. We thought of the great monolithic piece of slate in Westminster Abbey, the one that says simply, "Remember Winston Churchill." Well, that's what we'll have placed in the band room, a beautiful piece of enduring stone into which will be carved the words, "Remember Vincent R. DiNino." Vincent DiNino has now, in fact, gone AWOL on a permanent basis. But we remember the sentence that he wrote many years ago, that sentence that contains, once again, his patented 11 exclamation marks. "I loved you all, and you were my family, and kept me young." An upbeat leads to something greater. Vincent DiNino's life was one gigantic upbeat. Interesting, that video that we watched a few minutes ago ends with Vince giving an upbeat. He set the example, set the stage, and created the environment for all of us to do remarkable things. His upbeat challenges us to react to it and to make the coming downbeat even stronger, more secure, and more meaningful than it ever could have been without him. Tonight, in the university's highest tribute, the UT Tower will burn orange and will be emblazoned with a white letter T. Remember Vincent R.
Countless thousands, Mr. DiNino lives on, will always live on. He's here with us today. He's with you. Because of that, you'll be with your children and their children. And as Rex Tillerson said earlier, paraphrase Walter Cronkite. What started here with you, Mr. DiNino, has indeed changed the world. No university event would be complete without two selections, the two he would want performed. And there's no better way to close a Longhorn event like this than with your Longhorn Band performing the Islands of Texas and Texas Flight. Safe travels tonight, this afternoon, hook 'em horns, and beat Kansas State.